Hi, everybody. It's Tom and Tom here. And today I'm going to spring a topic on Tom Malash here. Uh,
Ah,
just
wonderful.
just drop it out of the air. See what you got. And it and I wanted, we talk about culture on this podcast, and I wanted to talk about power today. And particularly, there's two broad types of power. There's soft power and hard power. And hard power is the kind of power that's been bestowed upon you by your role or position. And soft power is power that you earn by your behavior. And every organization has these two power mechanisms at work. And the dynamic between them sometimes says a lot about the culture that they're in. Any initial thoughts, Tom?
So so more of a confession, right? As a younger man going into a company, I'd look at the org chart and think that I was seeing a picture of the power.
How naive.
How naive. It's like, although I had inklings that that wasn't the case, even from my experience in college. Because in college, when I studied at the University of Michigan here, electrical and computer engineering, and I like to hang out in the secretary's office and chat and have fun and buy them gifts and play games. And and I realized really quickly that the most powerful person in the department was the secretary, who had theoretically the least power of anyone in the organization.
No hard power.
and and I'll give a real use case. So once I was signed up for a class and I attended one section instead of the other section. And in the one I attended, I actually got a good grade in. I got like an A. And the one I was actually signed up for that I didn't attend, they just failed me the same class. And and she saw that and she just fixed it for me as she saw the stuff coming in because she knew who I was. And she's like, Tom wasn't in that class. And she called up the professor I was in, and she was like, technically he was in the class that failed. And that professor he would never showed up. So he gets an E. He just fixed it. That was the real power in the organization, was my friend.
Yeah.
And I considered her a friend, and she was a friend.
I,
So
I,
the real power was soft.
yes, I have a similar soft power story. Years ago, I used to be in sales, and I was working with a company that was absorbed into Verizon eventually, called Ameritech. They were a Baby Bell, for those of you old enough to know what that is. Um, and I was working with another sales guy from a hardware company to sell $8 million worth of computers to them for a big project. And we had only really one question on our minds, which was, how is the decision about which hardware to purchase going to be made? It's a simple thing. When you're in sales, you need to understand the decision making process in order to have any influence on it.
Yep.
So we started out meeting with the program, the head of the program, and he didn't know. He was a nice guy and he was very open with us, but he did not know how the decision would be made. It was maybe below his pay grade. I'm not sure why he didn't know, but we thought, well, at that point we thought maybe it's above his pay grade. So we started working our way up the hierarchy. We ended up having tea with the senior vice president of Ameritech in Chicago. Lovely lady, very sweet, and her I can't remember. She had another one of her uh, peers in there with us, and they were both just very hospitable and were open and happy to answer any questions we had. They didn't have a clue about how the decision would be made. So we had worked our way up from the program lead to us basically just shy of the president of Ameritech, and nobody knew. And so we were just at that point fishing, like throwing a hook in the water. And we started just hanging out at Ameritech.
That's one of the better ways.
We were in the lunchroom, and there was a cute young lady in there eating lunch alone, and we decided to sit with her and just chat. We had no agenda other than she was cute, and the other guy that I was with was single, so he had something to gain from this conversation possibly. And she asked us like, "Well, you don't work here?" We're like, "No." She says, "Well, what are you doing here?" And we told her, and she said, "Oh, that's Glenn Larson, isn't it?" We'd never heard of Glenn Larson. Like, who's Glenn Larson? She goes, "Oh, he sits down the hall, like just like 3 halls down on the left, first door on the right." And we're like, "Seriously?" She's like, "Yeah, so that's what I understand." So after we finished eating, we walked down there, and then there's an unmarked door. But she told us which one, so we knew. We knocked on the door. A young man comes to the door, and we said, "Are you Glenn Larson?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "We were told that you're the guy making the decision about what kind of hardware to buy for this project." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Can we come in?" "Sure, come on in." He had one of our computers and one of our competitors' computers sitting there, and I actually 2 of our competitors' computers. And we said, "So, just started asking him questions. What do you think?" And he's telling us, and I was like, "Well, what about this?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know. We're going to have to put it." I said, "Isn't that going to add a lot of costs?" I said, "This other computer, this computer doesn't need to have the extra hardware, and it already has it built in." He's like, "That's a good point." And, what about footprint? We started grilling him and asking him questions, but basically we're convincing him that the hardware that we were recommending was better than this other stuff.
You're also, and this is really important, you're also making him smarter when he talks to anyone else in his own organization. He's going to come out of that conversation looking brilliant.
No doubt. No doubt. No doubt about
So
that.
it's really important to understand the value you're giving him, because you were giving him a lot of value.
Yeah.
Here's how to think about this sort of decision, and here's what you might consider.
But by the way, I'll end the story this way. We won the deal.
You
We 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 beat IBM with they had decided they wanted microchannel. For those of you who aren't old enough, microchannel was a bus architecture for where the expansion cards go in the computer. And it was a very short-lived experiment by IBM, and it gave them exclusivity, except they licensed it to one other company, NCR, a name you know and trust for personal computers, right? We got them to buy $8 million worth of NCR computers with that one conversation. One conversation is all we ever had with the guy.
Yeah.
And they
So
decided to buy them.
The point of use cases is these are real things. Before we wind up, I'll toss in just one use case, but I won't go into the details. When we first started Menlo, we were working with a client where you would expect to be paid net 60 days, right? The terms were net 30, but you would expect maybe coming in 60. We got them to pay net 3 days. You don't do that by the formal structure ever.
Soft power.
So these are real things that can make a real difference in how you run your business.
And I would just add on top of this, because we've been talking mostly about soft power and how important it is. The thing about hard power is that you almost can't talk about it without talking about building distrust.
Mm.
Whenever somebody uses hard power, says, look, I'm making a decision, you will do this, trust is lost. Even people that have hard power are better off using soft power than their hard power.
Maybe that's a topic for our next video, which is let's give some hard power use cases because they are really interesting. Like
Yeah, hard
we
power
did all
gone
soft power
wrong.
because you and I both know that's where we prefer to live. But it might be fun to talk about a few of the hard power kind of stations next time we sync up.
We'll do it.
All right.
Sounds good.
Great talking with you today, Tom.
Always a pleasure, Tom. And before we go, just a quick reminder to click the subscribe button. It's right there. You can see it. I know you can. And if you don't click it, we're just going to live in obscurity, which, we're used to, but we'd rather not.
That really describes our existence up to this point in time.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.